What happens when a humble farmer steps into a world of luxury jets and skepticism? Can hard work and determination outshine prejudice and doubt? Jackson Hayes, a man of the land, walks into a high-end airplane hangar with a dream that seems impossible to everyone but him. Judged by his dusty boots and weathered hat, he faces condescension and disbelief at every turn. But what happens next will leave you inspired and prove that true success is never about appearances. Stay tuned, because this is a story about breaking barriers, defying expectations, and showing the world the power of resilience. Before we continue, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? If you're enjoying these stories, make sure to hit subscribe, because tomorrow's episode is absolutely mind-blowing. The early morning sun cast a soft glow over the private hangar as Jackson Hayes stepped out of his weathered pickup truck. His boots crunched against the gravel, leaving faint trails of dust behind. Dressed in faded jeans, a well-worn flannel shirt, and his signature straw hat, Jackson looked every bit the farmer he was. But he wasn't here to talk crops or livestock. Today, he was here to buy a jet. Inside the hangar, the scene couldn't have been more different. Sleek, polished aircraft gleamed under the bright lights, and men in tailored suits engaged in quiet, purposeful conversations. The smell of fuel and new leather filled the air, mingling with the faint hum of nearby engines. Jackson strode toward the reception desk, his calloused hands carrying a small folder of documents. Before he could speak, a sharply dressed salesman, Lucas Green, intercepted him. Lucas glanced at Jackson, his gaze lingering on the mud-streaked boots and the creases in his shirt. A polite, practiced smile formed on Lucas's face, though his eyes betrayed a flicker of doubt. "Good morning," Lucas said, his voice dripping with professionalism. "How can I assist you?" Jackson extended a hand, his voice steady. "I'm here to inquire about purchasing a jet." For a split second, Lucas's smile faltered. He recovered quickly, but his tone carried a hint of skepticism. "You're looking to buy a jet?" he repeated, his eyes briefly scanning Jackson's outfit as if searching for evidence of a misplaced joke. "Yes," Jackson replied firmly, "for business." Lucas hesitated, then motioned toward the showroom. "Well, we have a range of models, but jets like these are typically for executive clients. Are you sure this is what you're looking for?" Jackson met Lucas's gaze without flinching, his calm demeanor masking a brewing frustration. "I'm sure," he said simply. As Lucas reluctantly led Jackson toward the display, his condescending attitude hung in the air. But Jackson had faced doubters before, and he knew exactly how to silence them. Jackson Hayes was no stranger to hard work or adversity. Born and raised in a small farming town in rural Alabama, he grew up watching his parents struggle to make ends meet. His father, a stoic man of few words, often worked long hours in the fields, while his mother balanced the demands of running the household with helping on the farm. Despite their tireless efforts, the family often found themselves scraping by, relying on the unpredictable whims of weather and market prices. Jackson's upbringing was rooted in two core values his parents instilled in him: never let your circumstances define you, and always find a way to adapt. These principles would shape his character and guide him through the most challenging times of his life. When Jackson was 23, his father passed away unexpectedly, leaving him to take over the family farm. The land was vast, stretching over 500 acres, but the profits were razor-thin. Jackson quickly realized that running the farm wasn't just about planting crops and harvesting them. It required resourcefulness, innovation, and the ability to navigate a brutal economic landscape. The local banks refused to lend him money, viewing his age and lack of experience as liabilities. His neighbors were skeptical, openly wondering if he'd be able to keep the farm afloat. For the first few years, Jackson struggled. He worked from sunrise to well past sunset, doing everything from tilling the soil to selling produce at local farmers' markets. He hired seasonal laborers when he could afford it, but during the harsh winters, he often took on odd jobs in town to cover expenses. Despite his relentless efforts, it felt like he was fighting a losing battle. The turning point came when Jackson decided to break away from tradition. While other farmers in the area focused on selling their produce locally, Jackson saw an opportunity to think bigger. He realized that if he could transport his products directly to cities across the country, he could bypass the middlemen and reach a wider audience. It was a bold, risky idea that earned him both ridicule and skepticism from his peers. Undeterred, Jackson put together a plan. He used every penny he had saved to purchase a used refrigerated truck and invested in packaging that would keep his produce fresh during long hauls. His first breakthrough came when he secured a small contract with a supermarket chain in Atlanta. The deal was modest, but it was enough to prove his concept. Over the next few years, Jackson doubled down on his strategy. He expanded his fleet of refrigerated trucks, hired a dedicated team of drivers, and built relationships with grocery chains in multiple states. By the time he turned 40, his farm wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. He diversified his operations, adding dairy and meat products to his offerings, and invested in state-of-the-art equipment to increase efficiency. But Jackson's success wasn't just about numbers. He took pride in creating jobs for his community and providing fresh, high-quality food to families across the region. His employees respected him for his work ethic and fairness, and his customers trusted him for his commitment to quality. At 57, Jackson had turned what was once a struggling family farm into a multi-million-dollar enterprise. His farm now supplied products to over 12 states, generating $15 million in annual revenue. Yet, despite his achievements, Jackson remained humble. He still woke up before dawn, still walked the fields to check on his crops, and still wore the same straw hat he'd had for decades. Now Jackson stood on the brink of his next big move. He believed that by using aircraft to transport his products, he could cut delivery times in half and guarantee freshness that no competitor could match. To many, it seemed like an extravagant leap, but to Jackson, it was the natural next step in his journey. For him, the jet wasn't just a tool. It was a symbol of how far he'd come and how much further he was willing to go. It was proof that no matter where you start, determination and innovation could take you anywhere. As Jackson Hayes stepped into the showroom filled with gleaming jets, he could feel the weight of eyes on him. The sharp contrast between his rugged attire and the polished suits of the sales team was impossible to miss. Leading the charge was Lucas Green, a sharply dressed salesman whose perfectly tailored suit and gleaming shoes practically screamed sophistication. Lucas approached Jackson with a polished but shallow smile. "Good morning, sir," he said, his eyes flicking briefly to Jackson's mud-streaked boots and faded jeans. "How can I assist you today?" Jackson, unfazed by the judgmental once-over, extended a calloused hand. "I'm here to buy a jet for business use," he said simply. Lucas's smile froze for a moment before he recovered, but the skepticism in his tone was unmistakable. "A jet?" he repeated, as if the word were foreign. "For business?" "That's right," Jackson replied, meeting Lucas's gaze head-on. "I've done my research and know what I'm looking for." "Well," Lucas said, his smile tightening, "we have a range of options here, but jets like these are typically purchased by executive clientele. Perhaps I can guide you toward something more practical?" Jackson's jaw tightened, but he refused to let the comment derail him. "I'd like to see what you have," he said, his voice calm but firm. As they walked past rows of sleek aircraft, Lucas continued his veiled barbs. "You know," he said, gesturing to a luxury jet, "these are primarily designed for comfort and style. They're not exactly delivery trucks." Jackson stopped, his gaze steady. "I'm not here for comfort," he said evenly. "I'm here for efficiency. I need a jet that can carry my products across the country quickly and reliably." Lucas's brow lifted slightly, and his polite smile now bordered on condescension. "Products?" he echoed. "You're looking to use a luxury jet. For cargo?" "That's correct," Jackson replied without hesitation. Lucas cleared his throat, clearly caught off guard. "Well," he said, glancing at Jackson's worn hat and boots, "perhaps this isn't the best fit for your business model." Jackson leaned in slightly, his voice low but unyielding. "That's for me to decide." Lucas faltered, the confidence in his polished demeanor wavering ever so slightly. Jackson had encountered this kind of skepticism before, and he knew the best way to respond wasn't with anger but with results. As Lucas reluctantly led him to view the jets, Jackson resolved to prove that appearances didn't dictate capability, and that doubt was merely fuel for his determination. Jackson Hayes stood firm in the opulent showroom, feeling the weight of Lucas Green's skepticism. Determined to demonstrate his seriousness, Jackson began by outlining his business's scope and success. "I own Hayes Farms," he stated, his voice steady. "We supply fresh produce, dairy, and meat to supermarket chains across 15 states, generating over $15 million in annual revenue." Lucas's eyebrows raised slightly, a flicker of surprise crossing his features. "That's quite an operation," he conceded. "But using a private jet for cargo isn't typical. Have you considered the logistics?" Jackson nodded. "I have. Time-sensitive delivery is crucial for my products. A jet would allow us to maintain freshness and outpace competitors." Lucas hesitated, then gestured toward a sleek aircraft. "This is the Falcon 7X. It offers a baggage capacity of approximately 140 cubic feet. However, it's designed for passenger comfort, not cargo." Jackson stepped closer to the jet, inspecting its structure. "With modifications, could it handle the weight and volume of my shipments?" Lucas pursed his lips. "Potentially, but it would require significant alterations, and the costs." "I'm prepared to invest," Jackson interjected. "Efficiency and speed are paramount. If this model isn't suitable, perhaps there's another option?" Lucas glanced around, then nodded slowly. "There are aircraft better suited for cargo. For instance, the Embraer Lineage 1000E offers a baggage capacity of 443 cubic feet. It's more adaptable for your needs." Jackson appreciated the shift in Lucas's demeanor. "I'd like to explore that option." As they moved to discuss further, Lucas's tone became more respectful. "I must admit, Mr. Hayes, I underestimated your intentions. It's uncommon for someone in agriculture to pursue private aviation for cargo." Jackson smiled faintly. "Innovation often requires stepping outside the norm. My business thrives on delivering quality products swiftly. This jet is a means to that end." Lucas nodded, a newfound respect evident. "Let's discuss the specifics and see how we can accommodate your requirements." Through detailed discussions and planning, Jackson and Lucas worked together to identify the best aircraft and necessary modifications to suit Hayes Farms' unique needs. Jackson's determination and clear vision gradually dispelled Lucas's initial doubts, paving the way for a partnership rooted in mutual respect and understanding. As Jackson Hayes wrapped up his discussions about the jet, a commotion near the reception area caught his attention. He noticed a young man, probably in his early 20s, dressed in a crisp maintenance uniform, speaking earnestly to an older manager. The manager, with his arms crossed and a dismissive expression, seemed unimpressed. Curious, Jackson walked closer, catching snippets of their conversation. "I'm just asking for a chance," the young man said, his voice steady but tinged with urgency. "I have the skills and I'm willing to work hard." The manager shook his head. "We prioritize applicants with more experience. This isn't a place for on-the-job training." Jackson observed the scene, recognizing the familiar fire in the young man's eyes. He saw himself in this kid Ethan Porter, as the name tag read, trying to prove his worth in a world that judged before understanding. Clearing his throat, Jackson stepped forward, drawing their attention. The manager's expression shifted to cautious politeness, but Ethan stood taller, his gaze steady despite the tension. "What's going on here?" Jackson asked, his voice calm but commanding. The manager hesitated, then replied, "Mr. Porter here is inquiring about an apprenticeship in our aviation maintenance program, but we have many qualified candidates with more experience." Jackson turned to Ethan. "And why do you think you deserve this opportunity?" Ethan met Jackson's gaze without flinching. I've been working on engines since I was a teenager. Cars, tractors, anything I could get my hands on. I know I don't have formal experience, but I've got determination, and I learn fast. I just need someone to believe in me." Jackson smiled faintly, appreciating the young man's honesty and grit. Turning back to the manager, he said, "If I'm trusting your team to maintain the jet I'm purchasing, I want to know you're giving opportunities to people willing to prove themselves." The manager's face reddened slightly and he stammered, "Of course, sir. We'll reconsider Mr. Porter's application." Ethan's eyes widened in gratitude. "Thank you, sir," he said to Jackson. "I won't let you down." Jackson nodded. "Don't thank me. Thank yourself by making the most of this chance." As he walked away, he knew he'd just helped change someone's life, just as someone had once done for him. Jackson Hayes stood firm, his presence commanding as the manager shifted uncomfortably under his gaze. The tension in the air was thick, and all eyes in the reception area turned toward the scene unfolding. Ethan Porter, the young man vying for an apprenticeship, stood silently beside Jackson, his posture tense but hopeful. "Let me get this straight," Jackson said, his voice calm but with an unmistakable edge. "You're telling me this young man isn't qualified because he doesn't have enough experience. Is that correct?" The manager hesitated, clearly flustered. "It's not that he's unqualified, sir," he stammered. "We just have a lot of applicants, and we prioritize those who are more seasoned." Jackson raised an eyebrow, his expression unyielding. "Seasoned? Or are you just looking for an excuse to avoid giving someone like him a chance?" The manager's face reddened. "That's not what I meant," he said quickly, fumbling for words. "We have a process, and we try to follow it as fairly as possible." Jackson took a step closer, his tone sharpening. "Fairly? Because what I'm seeing doesn't look like fairness. It looks like you've already made up your mind without really listening to what he has to offer." Ethan glanced at Jackson, his eyes wide with a mix of gratitude and disbelief. For a moment, it seemed as though he might speak, but Jackson held up a hand to stop him. "Let me tell you something," Jackson continued, now addressing the manager and everyone within earshot. "I've been in his shoes. I know what it's like to be dismissed before you've had a chance to prove yourself. And I also know that talent, grit, and determination don't always come with a polished resume." The room was silent, the weight of Jackson's words hanging in the air. The manager looked down, clearly caught off guard. "So here's the deal," Jackson said, his voice firm. "I'm about to invest a lot of money in this hangar by buying one of your jets. That means I expect the team maintaining it to be the best stand. I don't care if they have 20 years of experience or are just getting started. I care that they're willing to work hard and do the job right. If you can't see that in Ethan, then maybe you're not the right person to be making these decisions." The manager swallowed hard, nodding. "Of course, sir. We'll review his application immediately." Jackson nodded, then turned to Ethan. "The rest is up to you, kid. Don't waste this chance." Ethan's voice was steady, his gratitude evident. "I won't, sir. Thank you." As Jackson walked away, he knew the real victory wasn't just in the jet he was buying, it was in ensuring someone else got the opportunity he once fought for himself. As the deal wrapped up, the atmosphere in the hangar had noticeably shifted. Lucas Green, the skeptical salesman, now stood with a different demeanor. Gone was the condescending tone and guarded expression. Instead, he approached Jackson Hayes with a hint of humility. "Mr. Hayes," Lucas began, his voice lower and more sincere than before, "I owe you an apology. I misjudged you, and that was wrong. I'll personally make sure everything with your jet runs smoothly from here on out." Jackson turned to him, his expression calm but unreadable. "You're not the first to make that mistake," he said simply, "and you probably won't be the last. Just make sure you do better moving forward." Lucas nodded, his face tinged with genuine regret. "I will. Thank you for your patience." As Jackson prepared to leave, he saw Ethan Porter standing near the maintenance area, speaking animatedly with a supervisor. A faint smile crossed Jackson's face as he watched the young man take his first steps toward a brighter future. Ethan caught Jackson's eye and gave him a small, grateful nod, which Jackson returned. Walking out into the crisp air, Jackson looked up at the sky. The jet wasn't just a tool for business, it was a statement, a symbol of how far he'd come. But the real victory of the day wasn't the purchase. It was knowing he'd made an impact, proving that belief in opportunity could change lives. For Jackson, that was worth more than any jet. As Jackson Hayes drove away from the hangar, his story left an indelible mark not just on those who witnessed it, but on everyone who hears it. His journey is a powerful reminder that success isn't measured by appearances or assumptions. It's measured by resilience, determination, and the lives we touch along the way. Think about your own journey. How many times have you been underestimated? How often have you judged someone too quickly? Jackson's story teaches us to push beyond those limits to prove doubters wrong and to offer others the opportunities we wish we'd had ourselves. To everyone watching, remember this: you are more than what the world sees. Your dreams are valid, your work is meaningful, and your perseverance will always matter. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. If Jackson's story inspired you, take a moment to reflect on how you can make a difference. Believe in yourself, lift others up, and never stop chasing your goals. And if you're ready to share this message with the world, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Together, let's create a community where resilience, kindness, and opportunity thrive. Thank you for watching, and never stop believing in your value.